pensioners in particular. They get the red carpet rolled out for them because they do vote, like they actually do turn out. We couldn't take away winter fuel payments and make them means tested without it causing absolute havoc electorally. And now we backtracked.
But here's the problem. If you want to do anything about inequality, and if you want to rephase the tax system so that people who currently have fewer assets pay less tax, or then you also have to make it with more assets pay more tax. And that's disproportionately the boomers. So if you're saying we can't touch the boomers, then we should end this interview right now because there's nothing to be done.
Okay. See you later. Okay, but this is interesting, right? Because this also...
I'm still available on BBC Sound, so I should point out.
But back to the point of what we were saying around the pensioners, though, land value tax, that's going to affect pensioners as well, right? Because that generation have had this asset be massively inflated over the course of their life, whilst the demand has risen, supply has not. So that again is going to be a challenge for any government to do, because it's going to potentially lose them some votes. But it seems, again, eminently sensible.
Should we talk about land value tax? So land value tax is the idea that right now we have 3 taxes on property, and they are just about our 3 worst taxes. So council tax broken because it is so deeply regressive. And it's not surprised it's regressive because it was put together on a wet Wednesday in the panic after the poll tax riots.
Violence broke out in London during a protest against a new council tax called the poll tax. Many protesters said the march was hijacked by violent anarchists who attacked the police. Ultimately, the hugely unpopular tax was binned, and it also played a part in ending Margaret Thatcher's time as Prime Minister.
It was a temporary kludge.
I mean, we still have the same brackets.
It was great comms, though.
Don't we still have the same brackets since like 1991 or something?
Yeah,
like that
it hasn't been revalued since 1991. We'll be living on Mars in the year 3000, valuing our bubble on 1991 valuations. That's council tax. Bonkers. Business rates. Why? Because if we revalued, some people would win and some people would lose. The people who lose would be angry, and politicians can't deal with that. Business rates are broken. We see that when we see the high streets, because if you had a high street shop, which was very valuable 4 years ago, and today the high street's decimated, you'd hardly rent it out for anything, business rates will often still work on the value 4 years ago. So it's really hard for anyone to rent it out. Stamp duty, broken. You've somehow made it into a house worth 300 grand. You have the opportunity to move to a better job, other side of the country, other side of London. You want to buy another house worth 300 grand, but of course you can't, because stamp duty,
it's insane,
is an additional block. There was a report, I think 25 years ago now, stamp duty gums up the labour market. Stamp duty is 5 times higher than it was 25 years ago.
Wow.
So
that's your thing about incentives, right? You're creating a disincentive to move.
Yeah, exactly. You tax people moving, you're stopping people moving. Why do we want to stop people moving? Mad. So what do you do instead? So land value tax is about 150 years old in its basic conception. It's supported by economists from, again, at the Adam Smith Institute to the Resolution Foundation. The idea is you tax land every year. You don't tax the value of the building, you tax the unimproved value of the land. So if you have some land which you're not doing much with and you could be building houses there, you get taxed as if it was valuable, because it is valuable, you're just not using it. And that incentivizes you to use it. And if you already own land, currently business rates and to a degree council tax gives you an incentive not to improve it, because you'd be paying more tax. Land value tax gives you an incentive to improve it, because then land value tax, the proportion of property value, goes down. So in principle, brilliant. But it's hard because a lot of people do not want to pay an annual tax on their property, particularly people who've lucked out and are living in very large properties that they couldn't actually afford to buy today.
So would they have to sell it then if that was something you introduced?
Well, at this point, I get a bit free market, because what's the word for someone who is asset rich but cash poor? The word is rich. Yeah, if you live in a £3 million house, you have £3 million. How can you get £3 million? You could borrow, you could sell and move somewhere else. You could rent out part of the house. There's lots of ways to do it. But ultimately, it's in society's interest that we free up property. If you don't, you can build houses, and we should have a tax system that encourages that. But if you want it to be easier for young people to afford homes, it has to be harder for some other people. Again, there's no free lunch. We can't magic houses out of nowhere.
Well, clearly we're trying to build them, but we can't build them quick enough.
No, you can't. So there's always going to be a political cost. Yeah, there's always an opportunity cost. There's always a trade-off. And the politicians have to accept that. And they haven't been willing to do that. Land value tax, supported by economists across the political spectrum, supported by not a single politician. The Green Party used to be in favour of the land value tax. Last election, they dropped that, became a long-term aspiration. Instead, stupid utopian wealth taxes. The most depressing tax development for me are the people who had no hope of being in government. The only thing they can do is move the political dynamic. What's the terrible phrase? They move the Overton window. They didn't. They decided just to play populist politics. Pathetic.
I mean, we're seeing people like Mr. Dyson buy up hordes of land in this country, basically to
avoid inheritance,
consolidate his wealth that way. There's complete wastage, effectively, of the land. It's private. It doesn't. There's no commons aspect to it. I mean, ordinary people can't access the land. It's not being turned into anything that is socially useful.
Well, I think part of that is planning. That if the land couldn't have houses built on it, no matter who owns it, then tax isn't going to make a change. You need to make planning law easier. You need to deregulate. Labour, to its great credit, probably the best the government has done is a bit of planning deregulation. But you need to go further, not by area. I'm not going to say more about it than that. But once you've done that, if the land has development potential, then a land value tax provides a huge incentive on someone like Dyson to either develop it or sell it. And either of those is a good result. The question is, how do you square the circle? How do you transition to land value tax in a way which is fair, which doesn't kick grandma out of her house, and is politically doable? And I think there are ways. You just need to think about doing it in the long term, say phasing it in over 10 years, gradually mutating council tax and business rates into a land value tax, and at the same time cutting stamp duty. Again, we can't do utopian thinking. There is no point me drawing on a blank sheet of paper the perfect land value system. Let's do it today, because it's not going to happen. You have to have a way to move towards it, and it can be done, I'm convinced.
And then just on the land thing, because this is obviously a conversation that's come up a lot in the last couple of months with Labour's family tax on farms and things around that kind of stuff. If you've got a farm, for example, and now you're being slapped with what is seen to be an unjust levels of inheritance tax for young farmers, is it hysteria? Is it sensationalist? Has the Chancellor made the right decision?
There was a huge amount of use of agricultural land for tax avoidance.
Dyson, etc.
Yeah.
Almost certainly Dyson. What Labour did is probably going to affect very few farm estates, probably just a few hundred a year. And a lot of farmers were very unhappy when I said that, but I nevertheless believe that it's true. Mostly it's easy to avoid. You can give it to your children 7 years before you die. Some people can't do that. Some farmers are too old. They're not going to live 7 years. Some can't afford to give it away. Some don't have children. So these answers don't always work. So some people will pay, and lots more, even those who almost certainly won't pay it, will worry about it. So it has a consequence. What Labour did went too far in hurting family farms, but not enough to stop tax avoidance. Because if today I have 5 million quid, I want to buy agricultural land to avoid tax, that still works. The first £1 million is totally inheritance tax free. The next 4 million quid is 50% free of inheritance tax, so 20%. Effective rate. So Labour went too far and not far enough at the same time. There's a better way. What's the better way? One thing you could do is you could say, OK, we will continue to have a complete inheritance tax exemption for farms. Not the biggest, say, 10 million, 20 million. You guys have to pay. You are very asset rich. You can monetize that. Smaller farms, you're going to be completely exempt from inheritance tax. But if your children sell the farm or stop using it as farmland, bang, we reverse that exemption.
So then you protect the family farm.
Yeah, and it's quite right. If someone inherits a family farm, sells it and gets cash, they should be taxed in the same way as someone who inherits cash, because they did inherit cash. We propose in a bit of detail how it could work, and the National Farmers Union supports the idea. Small farmers support the idea.
National farmers must be annoyed that there are super rich people who are now complicating this picture for them by trying to do some smart little tax avoidance.
Many farmers are. For the NFU, its members include those guys, so it's harder for the NFU. It's kind of really weird that there are farmers who own land which is worth millions and millions of pounds, but they are scraping and saving to make a penny. From an economist's point of view, that is impossible. You cannot have an asset worth 5 million quid that only yields £100,000 a year. That shouldn't be. But it is. Why? Because people are buying land for other reasons. One of those reasons is to avoid tax, and you can stop that. You can actually help farmers by reducing the value of their assets, which is a very unusual thing, but you can. The other reason is people buy agricultural land just because it's nice. You're buying a big house in the country, great. Maybe you buy 30 acres of farmland to go with it. Oh, that's lovely. That means that the value of farmland gets artificially elevated. And again, the answer to that, let's go back to it, land value tax.
As you've pointed out, there is an orthodox view across tax experts, across the political tax spectrum, about just some things that would make this system simpler and better functioning. And yet we don't do them.
The Treasury knows it. HMRC knows it. The politicians know it.
Everyone knows it, but then we don't do it.
But they won't do it. And it's not because politicians are stupid. It's not because they're dishonest, that they are terrified of the public. They don't want to say the truth. And the truth is that the current direction is unsustainable. Every year, we have more and more elderly people who have to be paid for. And that means that we either cut the NHS, which we can't do, so we cut other stuff, and taxes go up. And that's the path we're on. And unless you make a change, you're not choosing the status quo. You're choosing a status quo that is getting worse and worse every year.